Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And today we have a special guest, Kate Campanelli, running as the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor for the state of Massachusetts. Thanks for coming.
Elliot, Gail, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Before we start asking Kate questions, though, if you remember the last show that we had, we put our email addresses on, and I said, if you have any comments, please send us the comments. Well, I have a comment that I want to read. The issue was the abortion issue. It says, when I see signs that say my body and I have a choice to abort, the answer is no. When you're pregnant, your body isn't just yours anymore. You're sharing your body with the unborn. To abort is the killing of a human being, the killing of an unborn life. To be clear, you abort, you just killed someone. That was one of the comments from one of our listeners. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but that was a comment that was emailed to me. But it brings up an interesting question, Kate. The Supreme Court is going to be discussing Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court could eliminate Roe v. Wade. Then it becomes states' rights. So the state can either approve abortion or not approve abortion. Mm-hmm. So I hate to start off with a tough question, but how do you feel about that?
You know, it brings up a good point. This decision would bring it back to the states. Now, I think the Massachusetts legislature prepared for something like this happening a few years ago with the Roe Act. And so to officially legalize abortion here in Massachusetts. Now, I do have some issues with the Roe Act here passed in Massachusetts, specifically around minors being able to get abortions without parental consent, and also, being able to have an abortion after 24 weeks. Now, these are issues that were in the Roe Act that I disagree with.
Okay, so that's a fair comment. Okay, now here's another one.
Okay.
You are running for lieutenant governor, but you have an opponent for lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. But your opponent is saying they're running with Jeff Deal, and mm-hmm. you're running with Dowdy.
Yes.
But you're running separately at first, correct? So you could end up being on the ticket with Jeff Deal. Mm-hmm. So this really bugs me, okay? I've seen some of your campaign stuff or mm-hmm. emails that you've sent, and you've said some not that complimentary things about Jeff Deal. So what happens if you win and Jeff wins? How is that going to work together?
Well, let's back up a little bit. First, I don't think it's uncomplimentary to be factual when we're talking about we're in a primary. We have to differ between candidates, and what are those differences? It's especially important in a primary to vet, for voters to be able to vet the candidates. When you're putting out facts and information on the candidate, your opponent, it's very important for the voters. I wouldn't say it's unflattering. It's the truth. It's facts, and people have the right to know that. If we look at the convention, that's a good test for us to see, or a good lesson to learn about how the primary should work out as far as running as a team. There weren't a lot of crossovers. They voted, the first vote at the convention was for lieutenant governor. The second vote at the convention was for governor. There wasn't a lot of crossover there. Chris and I both got roughly 30% of the vote, and roughly the same amount of votes at the convention, and we expect that to happen come September. Okay. They're running as a team.
As a former teacher, I'm sure you must have run into critical race theory. Were you forced to teach it in your classroom? And what would you do about getting it out of the classrooms in Massachusetts because so many people, so many parents have risen up against it.
Sure. This is an issue that we hear all across the state. You know, parents are getting more and more involved in their school committee, getting more involved politically, and this is one of the major issues. I think we've seen that COVID has really exposed a lot of the
Yes.
teaching styles. You know, the classroom came into people's homes. As you mentioned, I was a teacher during COVID. I did fully remote from my own living room to hybrid to in the classroom, and you can see the challenges that our kids have faced and have fallen behind in our classroom. I was in 4th grade, and just to see the basics, not the basics that we're lacking from reading, writing, arithmetic. You know, these are the things we have to get back, and we do have a plan for that. Critical race theory, and there are so many other words and programs that
The
they're
1619
bringing in,
project, yeah.
right, that bringing into our schools. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen, and that starts at the top. It starts with the governor. The governor appoints a secretary of education. So we have to make sure we appoint a secretary of education that's in line with those values. From there, there's a lot of appointments that the governor can appoint someone to under that secretariat, including the commissioner of Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we can't forget about the community colleges and higher education as well, where this is probably also being taught. But our local schools take direction from DESE. You know, our administration takes direction from them. So if we don't have someone in that position that's in line and willing to hold those school districts accountable for that curriculum, that's where we run into problems. So it's very essential that we have someone with those values that can push back and hold those
Well, I
districts
know
accountable.
that there have been teachers that were fired because they would not teach it. And I wonder, were you forced to teach it?
I was not forced to teach it. No, I was not. There are, one thing that did concern me in some way, being a teacher, is what you learn in professional development.
Yes.
That's where I saw some of, not necessarily critical race theory, but the beginnings of it.
Yes, as part
being
of the
pushed.
curriculum.
Yes, and being taught to teachers and how to approach things in the classroom. So I think we do need to look at what kind of professional development is being brought into our districts.
The governor has that much power to appoint the positions that you stated.
Sure.
Why do you think Charlie Baker kept them, did not change them? He kept on the people that were there.
I can't answer that question for the current governor.
But as a teacher, and now you said 4th grade,
Yes.
so this may not be relevant to you, but how do you feel about kids bringing their phones into the classroom?
You know, I'll tell you, before I was in 4th grade, I was subbing all over the district. So I was in high school. I saw children, and I'll even say 4th graders have their cell phones with them. And, if we see them, we had to bring them back to the office. But I don't think school is an appropriate place for use of cell phones in the classroom. If they take them, leave them in their backpacks, in their lockers, that's fine. But to take them out and to see them using them in the way that they are in schools, it's
they're in
it's
school
concerning.
to learn, not to text their
Exactly.
wanna ask
It's the
you one more-
old-fashioned way of passing notes.
Right. I want to ask you one more question
Sure,
about
sure.
education. And it has to do with school security and
Okay.
safety. Obviously, because of what happened down in Texas.
Sure.
And do you feel that the schools in Massachusetts have done enough to provide safety that's needed for children if an event like that should happen here?
What we've seen was heartbreaking.
terrible.
Absolutely, and you can get complacent. Something,
Yes.
a tragedy
Yeah.
happens. We saw what happened in Newtown. We're seeing what's happened
Yep.
in Texas and in between too, unfortunately. But if it's not, as human nature is, if it's not on our minds, we get complacent with our atmosphere and where we are. So I think after these tragedies, there are some things that the schools and school safety have implemented, but again, you just right. And I don't have a problem with school resource officers in school. I see the benefit that they have in the schools, in the classroom, for the children, just to see a police officer around as well. It builds that good relationship with the
I
community.
think it makes them feel safer. Too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even outside of school, they see that officer outside or at different events, and it's not a intimidation. It's more of they're there for support. They're there to protect them.
Okay, I got this email from you about the Expenditure Review Commission.
Yes.
I'd like you to explain that and go over your position on it and basically go over this thing.
Sure. Well, there is a commission in Massachusetts that actually looks at how taxes are being spent, and they try to find the most efficient way to spend your tax dollars.
According to
in
them.
It's not
Exactly.
working, I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, I think there may be some. I think there may be some issues there. We can look at, for example, they've looked at the alcohol tax. Now, we don't get taxed on alcohol here in Massachusetts if you were to go to a liquor store. However, the taxes within the chain of buying, the retailer
Exactly,
buying,
yeah.
but they're looking at ways. So, well, that's not efficient enough. How do we get the money better from the taxpayer? So that's one thing that this commission is looking at. So I don't think this commission is doing what it should be doing, which is how can we best help the taxpayers or be more efficient with tax dollars than worrying about increasing taxes or the best way to get your money. We should be focusing on, especially in times like right now, we are so fortunate in Massachusetts where we are so healthy with our budget. Some would say where we have
Yes.
billions of dollars in excess funding. Why aren't we looking at ways to bring that tax money back to our local communities, where it belongs, where it helps you as the taxpayers? We're seeing as we're traveling around the Commonwealth, a lot of communities in the current state of our bloated state budget, if you will, they're talking about 2.5 overrides. They're talking about increases in property taxes. That should not be happening. We need to invest in local aid. We need to make sure that this money is going back to our local communities to help stop the, especially those on fixed incomes, an
People
increase in
with children,
property.
with
People with
families.
Exactly. This affects us, especially with skyrocketing inflation the way it is. This is what we should be focusing on, not ways to tax you more efficiently.
Isn't a commission like that? I always get concerned when a commission is appointed
Sure.
because isn't that the legislature's job?
Well, and
To
you
do
bring up
things like that?
a great point, Gail. It is under a statute, so there are ways that you're going to have to. We would have to work around that. But yes, that is a point of concern.
And as far as the overrides go, didn't they just pass one in Ipswich? I know there was one, maybe it hasn't passed yet, but Beverly went through an override attempt once,
Oh,
and that was in 2008. Elliot and I were foremost in getting
we beat it.
people,
Okay.
getting people to vote against it, and we won.
okay.
And we had all the odds against us, and we won.
And we won every precinct, but
Yeah.
see, what we were saying then and what bothers me about government now is we were saying, you've got enough money,
Yeah.
just use it wisely.
Right.
Okay, and that's what government doesn't do, and this commission certainly isn't doing that either.
Exactly.
You know, so like, for instance, why are we spending millions of dollars on illegals? You know, why are we giving them a driver's license? I just had my second booster shot today. I had to fill out a form that, I don't know, maybe I needed to give them my birth certificate and my entire history the way that form was, and yet we let illegals in out of the country with nothing.
Sure.
So how do you feel about the illegal situation, giving them money, giving them Social Security, giving them state aid?
Oh,
It's costing me money.
absolutely. You know, it's a burden on the taxpayers. It's a burden for when we talk about good education for our schools. When we talk about local aid, you know, again, this is money that should be going back to you, not for programs for people who are here illegally. You know, there's a difference between, as we all know, a difference between coming here legally, wanting to work the right way, but to come here illegally is not an option. And when we look at the alternative in this election come November, with Maura Healey as governor, Massachusetts will become a sanctuary state.
Right.
Well, like, for instance, in education, because you know
Sure.
education, okay, gets me cranky that we have kids going into our classrooms that don't speak English.
Right.
And to me, what that does is that makes the kids that speak English not as well educated because the teacher has to spend more time with the others.
Sure.
Doesn't it make more sense to make English an official language of the state and make it so that if you are not fluent in English, learn English first and then go to school?
Right. You know, we see a lot of ESL, English as a second language programs in our schools, and especially in the inner cities, where you have more of an immigrant population. But it goes to, I think what we're seeing too is equity in the classroom, and you know, we're trying to be more equitable, but in education, every student is different, and we have to make sure that we're setting up each student for success. So when a teacher is focused on, you know, someone who may be struggling and not being able to help another student who may need that extra push to be a little more successful too, you know, how is that equitable to the student that wants to succeed? Or, you know, we see this with AP classes. You know, we're eliminating AP classes in our high schools
And
because
that's
due
such a
to
mistake.
equity reasons, and we're not fostering the
Right.
children
Exactly.
to
We're getting rid of valedictorians, but if a quarterback makes a great pass, that's front page news. So how does that make the other football players feel? Why don't we honor students for doing well?
yes, it's okay to succeed. Yes,
Yeah. It
is.
absolutely.
And getting rid of the
fo-
AP classes is such a
Oh,
mistake.
it's
It's just keeping everybody equal.
Exactly,
And that's what that equity
right.
nonsense is all about.
Right.
rather than
So we need
helping
we need to make sure that we're giving equal opportunity.
Exactly.
Equal opportunity for our children to succeed.
Which is
And
why they
that's
need to
the-
learn
and
English
that's the
before they need to be in the
difference.
classroom. So,
I wanted to ask you about going back to the driver's license for immigrants situation. The governor opposed it, and the Democrats overrode the veto.
Yes.
So there we have it. So now that opens the door for illegal immigrants with a driver's license to get the opportunity to vote. And I know it started in different parts of the country, particularly California. They could only vote in elections for city council
Sure.
and that sort of local elections. Now it's expanding. And they want to expand it, of course, before 2022 election. And that scares me.
The what we have to worry about is automatic voter registration.
Right.
To your point.
Yes.
What
What is it, motor voter? Is that what they call it?
Oh, is that? I have not heard that
Motor
one
voter.
before. But automatic voter registration is a very big concern.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that can happen. It happened to me personally. When I was married, I was recently married last year. I went to the DMV to change my name, and I checked the box that said, I do not want to register to vote. I was already registered in my town. I'll take care of that myself. I received a letter in the mail from my town clerk a few weeks later saying, you are now registered under my new married name, unenrolled. Like, well, this is... So I go up to my town clerk, and I wasn't re-registered. I had 2 registrations.
Oh, boy.
Hi, you can vote twice.
Yes,
Oh,
my
boy.
maiden name and my new married name. So there was a big to-do about, merging those. Now, as you know, as candidates, we were collecting signatures all spring. So it was probably about a month ago now. I went up to I'm from Spencer, went up to my small town hall picking up signatures. Hey, did you know we got 60 new voter registrations from the Secretary of State just in this past week? And do you know how many of those were duplicates? 50.
Oh.
50 of the 60 were duplicate registrations. So this is happening in towns and cities all over.
And nobody's watching it.
Right. So you have to make sure your town clerk is vigilant. There's just so much room for mistake. And adding this bill into it's a very, very big cause for concern.
That's how you win elections.
That's right, yeah.
You can vote 2 or 3 times.
Right.
There's a lot of
knocking people.
concern. We talked
Sure.
a little bit about gun control safety, but the Democrats always have a knee-jerk reaction when anything ever happens. And now they're pushing for really crazy gun control. The president would like to ban all guns.
Right.
Because he was talking about the Glock, for instance, which is one of the most popular guns that people have. And it has I think it's a 15 millimeter capacity. He wants to ban all, anything over 10 millimeters. Well, a 10 millimeter will not fit in the Glocks. So therefore, you're banning the guns.
Sure.
And he denies that he's trying to ban guns. So how do you think that you and the governor would deal with this kind of thing?
Sure. It goes back to we have to deal with the legislature.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of laws on the books. In fact, too many, I believe.
Yeah.
I support the Second Amendment. I wouldn't want to see, and I know Chris wouldn't want to see any more gun laws on the books.
All we need to do is enforce them.
Yeah.
What I was just going to say, we need to enforce what we already have.
Right.
The Bartley-Fox Amendment that said, if you were caught with an illegal handgun, it's a mandatory 1 year in prison. Has that ever been enforced?
I doubt it.
No. No? So,
It's a problem.
sure.
And I don't think people understand the problem. The situation in Texas, that kid when he was 14 years old wrote on Facebook that when he graduates high school, he wants to shoot up a school. And it was sealed, so nobody knew about it. And he was able to buy a ridiculous gun and then shoot up a school. Now, should we... And this has to be the last question because I want you to be
half
able
hour
to say
does go
something.
fast.
It does. But should we open up the minor's record before we sell them a gun at age 18?
Sure, and that goes to background checks, and I do agree with background checks. I think we have to really focus on mental health issues, and not have the knee-jerk reactions. There's still a lot we have to learn about what happened in Texas and the
Right.
motivations there. But time after time, we see that this is a mental health issue, and what are we doing to improve the quality of lives for people in Massachusetts, for people with mental health, to really prevent these tragedies.
Yep.
Uh,
I think you're right.
Okay, you now have 2 minutes to tell us why to vote for you.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay. Well, to your viewers who may not be familiar with me, I come from Spencer, Mass. So on the other side of Worcester County. Glad to be up here in Beverly today. But I come with a background of over 12 years of legislative experience, from DC as a legislator staffer to here in Massachusetts at the State House. I'm joining the ticket, as we spoke about, with Chris Doty, who's running for governor. He comes with that executive level experience of knowing how to run a business, a manufacturing company here in Massachusetts. Successful, 30 years, manufacturer here in Massachusetts, and creating jobs, signing the front of paychecks. So we complement each other very well. And I think when we're looking towards November and that general election, we're the team to beat. We're the team that can win this election against Maura Healey. We're here to represent everyone, affordability, better schools, local aid, as we've talked about, making sure there's so much we could talk about, but public safety. These are issues that affect all our communities. We want healthy communities, improve the quality of life here in Massachusetts, and that's what Chris and I are bringing to this ticket.
That's good. Well, we want to wish you good luck. And I'm sure you'll meet a lot of interesting people as you continue on your campaign.
Well, she met us.
I won't say a word about that. But we want to thank you for coming here. We've enjoyed speaking with you, and I'm glad you were able to answer our questions and to provide answers that may propel you into higher office in Massachusetts. And I think that we're going to continue to have as many candidates as we can for the state, because I think it's an important election,
Absolutely.
and I think the viewers will appreciate it.
Yes, a very
So-
critical election.
So thank you very much.
Gail,
Okay.
Elliot, and to all your viewers, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. And I want to thank the viewers for watching. And as I said, we hope to have more candidates on so you can get kind of a different perspective maybe than you would get on TV, on regular cable TV, regular station TV, or in the newspapers. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you the next time. Good night.